So, hi everyone, and welcome to this online class about spiritual practices for your storytelling endeavors. I'm Heather Box, and I am the co-founder of the Million Person Project. And I'm here with my friend and my client, Kelly Blaser. So, say hello.
Hello, I'm Kelly Blaser, and I am the founder of Dharma Bridge, and I'm a psychotherapist and a practitioner, student, and teacher of yoga and meditation.
Yeah, and so Kelly is many things to me. She's a dear friend. She's also one of my clients, storytelling clients. She's a member of the Story Academy, and we've done some one-on-one work together on her story. And one of the things, so I asked her to come on here and to lead an online class for my community because I felt like I've learned so much from Kelly's deep knowledge around spirituality and around emotions and psychology. And I have benefited so much from being in relationship with her. And one of the things that I have also benefited from is watching her navigate the storytelling process. So I get the front row seat to so many people's amazing journeys of transformation around their story. And I get to see, and some of you, Letta, Curtis, it can be a roller coaster emotionally to be on the storytelling journey and to be coming out with your personal story in a public way. It really, really can feel like you're just going through the ringer. And on some days, it's the best idea you've ever had, and you feel so empowered and emboldened and aligned with your purpose. And then the next day, you just feel exposed and unsure and skeptical that it even is the right thing for you to do. And I watch people navigate this all the time. And it's been especially interesting to watch Kelly navigate this because she has so many tools that she teaches other people that she's used to employing and engaging with in her life to help her sort of navigate when the ego comes up or when the self-doubt comes up. She's able to really navigate that in a way that I perceive as graceful and useful. So that's why I wanted her to come on here and talk to you all about tools that you can use to step into your leadership and tell your story. So thank you for answering the call and for offering this free class to our people.
Thank you.
And I'd love to just start off by hearing from you about what it's been like for you on your storytelling journey and what has been the most important sort of practice that you've employed to help you, or deployed, whatever, to help you engage with the work.
Well, as you know, like I've been teaching about spiritual practice and about the Dharma for a really long time. And one of the things that I wasn't particularly aware of before I started working with the Million Person Project was that I mostly just kept going back to the texts and trying to teach from the texts, teach from the scriptures, for lack of a better word, like from the Recognition Sutras or from the Yoga Sutras or from the Dhammapada or whatever, like just trying to draw the direct teachings out and bring them to people. And essentially what you have instructed me to do and shown me the light around is the fact that people can't necessarily hear me unless I'm really showing how I've processed that through my own experience, so that I have to, if I want to actually be of service at all, I get to figure out how to lead with story. And that actually, if I can lead with story in a way that also reveals like the transformation that I've had around my own values, then there's all the more power in it. So going back to values and just being really, self-revealing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing about you and about so many of people on this call is that before Kelly came to work with us at the Million Person Project, like she's already a leader. She's already having a big impact. She's already doing amazing work. She's really well versed in what she teaches. She didn't have to tell her story to be effective. It wasn't like she was like, Mom, I can't impact anybody because I don't tell my story. It was more that she was leaving an opportunity on the table for a deeper level of connection with her audience, and for an opening with people who may not already resonate with her. So one of the things that I know from being friends with Kelly is that she's really, really well studied in this work, and that can make her like confusing sometimes. She can really talk over my head to the point where I'm like, wait, but I missed the whole thing. Like non-centric karmic conditioning. I don't understand what that means. And it's not that you can't teach me that concept, but it's that you can't engage me from there. You first have to call me in and get me emotionally connected to what you're saying, and then you can teach me. Unless I am already someone who's studied too and who's already deep in this stuff. And that's why so many of us spend our careers just like staying in these smaller settings where people get us, as opposed to getting out to the public, is because we never do the work to say, well, what are the values of what I'm saying, and what are the stories that are going to show why I value those values, and then how can I connect that to my work? And so that's what Kelly has done now, and it's really awesome to watch you like level up in your leadership and your storytelling and all of the above.
Yeah. I mean, as we're talking about it, I realize like it's a very iterative process. Like I actually feel like there's so much more to do in this regard, but I've definitely gotten a lot more ballsy around bringing my reality totally to the fore. And we did a lot of work around actually building out some stories for a retreat. I led a Dharma Bridge retreat in February, and your support ended up being really invaluable as I approached it really differently than I ever would before. And it was important for me because I had a bigger vision than I guess I had held before.
Yeah. And so there's two reasons why I wanted Kelly to come on here. One is to share with you how, storytelling has worked in her life, like what we've been talking about so far. And secondly, is to give you all some tools as each of you on this call in some ways. And I see the names of who's on here, and it's like, it's so true for the people whose names I can see right now, is you all are taking a step up in your vision and in your leadership. And a lot of that means stepping into the unknown. And if you guys knew exactly how to get to where you wanted to go, you would already be there, right? So it's like you are confident that you have a bigger calling, and you're confident that you need tools and support to actually get there. And so knowing that about you, and having watched thousands of people go through the storytelling process, one of the things I know is that when people have developed a deep relationship with themselves, when they have a spiritual practice that they engage with every day, or when they have a community of people that they meet with weekly at a church or a mosque or somewhere in their community, when they go to therapy and have a therapist who can help them as some of the stuff that comes up around storytelling and leadership comes up, that's really, really helpful to me and Julian. When we lead these classes and when we coach people, the difference is stark between people who have done deep emotional work and currently have a community in which they can deal with some of the anxiety and uncertainty and amazingness that comes up in the storytelling process, and the people who don't. And Julian and I do our best to try to hold space for people when they go on this emotional journey that can cause anxiety, but we're not trained in that. We're not professionals in that. That's not our wheelhouse. And so this last go around in the academy, I worked with so many people from Kelly's community, and there was a palpable difference because they had a sangha, meaning they have a spiritual community that they're part of. So they're able to take the anxiety or the uncertainty that comes up in the storytelling process and process it somewhere else and find the gems that are within it and the blocks and all of that. And so that's what I wanted Kelly to do today, is to give you all a couple of like the baseline nuggets for how to engage in a spiritual practice or emotional practice while you're storytelling.
And I guess what I want to say is, like, there are certain little practices that I could try to convey in the context of this call that would probably be helpful. But the bigger thing is actually just a total reframe around how you experience anxiety, or what you think that anxiety means, or like how you deal with the obstacles that come up for you as you're dealing with bringing your story into the world, or whatever your vision is. I mean, I'm just presuming that people are on this call and in Heather's community because they're trying to tell their story. So I will, speak to that. But just as a point of reference, like the people that are in my community, like the people in Dharma Bridge, they're not out there trying to tell their story necessarily. I mean, a few of them are, and they found Heather, right? Because we did something similar like this a while ago. But most of them actually just have other sorts of visions that they're trying to bring forward in their lives, like either professional visions or kind of causes, like they're activists. They have a vision for how they could have an impact on certain aspects of the way that the world works, whether it's like immigration policy or, women's rights. I have a number of people that have some pretty significant, like some pretty big cause work that they're doing, but the frictions that they deal with are not that dissimilar from what people deal with when they're doing story work. I think what you can assume in story work is that you're going to have to deal with all of your shit. Like you just kind of, and I know that you probably can't like sell people into the story program starting like that. So I hope this doesn't mess things up for you. But basically you want to start this kind of endeavor with an assumption that you're going to have to face all of your shadowy demons, right? And I think that goes for anybody who's got a vision they're trying to bring forward in the world. Like they just have to assume that they're going to like wrestle with the snakes of their ego the whole way through. And if they can actually get kind of enthusiastic about that undertaking, then things will just go a whole lot better. I mean, I have this picture of Hercules and the Hydra. It's like this kind of age-old imagery, and you actually see people in statuary and what have you wrestling with snakes all the time. And I think of it as like, this is actually what we're up to in this life experience. Like whether you have a vision and a story or not, really, you're going to wrestle with your ego. But if you do that, like if you take on a bigger vision, and if you choose to do that consciously, it can actually be really rewarding. It's going to also suck, but it can be really rewarding rather than being this experience of just like getting kind of swallowed up every time things don't go the way that you would have liked them to go. I mean, I think about this all the time. For those of you that are spiritual practitioners, like if you have ever seen a picture of the Buddha with a hood, like a serpent, like a cobra hood. Are you familiar with that? So look around, you'll probably see it like tomorrow. Like there's a lot of imagery of the Buddha with a cobra hood. And I think of it as like, there is a way to, instead of being in a fight with your ego, to actually have your vision and your life's work kind of unfold underneath this like protective hood of an ego that you have not tamed, but brought into alignment with your soul's mission here, for lack of better terminology. So I think that's the first thing, like just a big reframing of what anxiety means, or what rejection means, or if people don't want to collaborate with you and it hurts your feelings, like what that means. If you feel vulnerable, like if you fall down on your face. Heather fell down on her face the other day, like literally. She's got some bruises here, and and shame comes up. I mean, it's actually really, really interesting. Those are the moments that you are the most, like, they're the most potent moments. So if you kind of go forward, almost like hunting those really intense moments of fear or retraction or vulnerability or shutdown or shame, like even the shame spirals, hunt those moments, because those are the moments you have an opportunity to kind of reparent yourself, and you're actually dealing with something that's been, generally speaking, energetically lodged and under the level of consciousness, but actually driving a lot of the time, a lot of your behavior. Then, I mean, you start to realize, like, oh, when I'm actually in touch with this shit is when I actually have an opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so one of the things, so seeing who's on this and knowing the people who signed up for it, one of the things I know is that there's this real tendency to like retreat. It's like we all have this desire, you know, everyone on this call has this desire to be like, oh, I'm going to go big. I'm going to make my voice heard. I'm going to like do something vulnerable, and I'm going to really put myself out there with my story, or I'm going to go like pitch a new investor or gallery, or I'm going to, you know, I'm going to decide that I'm going to be a leader in this way. And the decision gets made, and it's like, yes. And I get to be on the other ends of those calls when people are like, ready to go for it. And then there is usually the moment when someone undecides what to do. And sometimes it happens immediately after they tell their story or they do the thing. And they'll call and say, Heather, like, I did that and it didn't feel good, or now I feel so weird about it. And then we get to work with that and find where the growth is in that. And I know that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, like, shake your head, nod your head if you know what I'm talking about, or leave in the comments. Like, yeah, I see Goldie waving. Like, when you get all excited, stand in your leadership, and then sort of immediately have to work with like, kind of regret, or I shouldn't have done that. I should have stayed in the way that I knew what I knew. And so that's what I would love for you to help. Like, what are the things that people need in order to navigate that? Not like break free of that, because this is going to be part of our life forever. I mean, I have it all the time, where that one step forward, sort of like one step back feeling, and then realize that actually I can then take 2 steps forward. You know, like, there's a whole dance I've gotten in with myself around this. But I want to hear from you, Kelly, like, what are the things that people need in their lives? Like, what do they need to embody and embrace in your understanding of the world in order to stay on this journey, whether or not they take 1 step back or 2 steps back or 4 steps forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because before we got on the call, I was sort of thinking we would talk about the specific obstacles that get in people's way when they're trying to play bigger, like when they're trying to play a bigger game, be seen more, share their light more fully. But then also it occurs to me as we're talking, like, sometimes people just are getting taken down by other things in life, actually completely unrelated to the story. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the people that came forth, they had a big vision for a moment and they got excited, and that's why they signed up, but they didn't really think of it as a commitment. They just got excited and they wanted something, right? They wanted to, they gotta, I mean, I don't know, this, you can write into the chat if this resonates for you. But like, if you've been working with Heather, like if you signed up for the story program or what have you, like, try to remember what it felt like when you started to understand the work that Heather did, for instance, and when you were like, oh, there's a community that can support me in actually making a big change in my life that would include sharing this huge piece of my life more publicly and being visible and being able to communicate and really being able to be of service. Like, I could actually contribute from this place. So you probably got like a hit of something that because I mean, Heather's a pretty compelling, like, communicator. You probably got kind of a hit of what would be possible if you could transform out of this kind of stuck place inside yourself where things aren't quite working and you're sort of just like trying to get away from suffering in one way or another, or, you know, you're stringing yourself along, just trying to get on top of life, whatever. And you get this sense of like, oh, I could actually like pull from a different place inside of myself and help other people to pull themselves into inspiration. And that would be incredible. But then the next thing that happens is you get contracted, and you don't really see that it's happening, or you might see that it's happening, but there's usually a fog around it, right? Like that's the problem. Like you don't really, it's happening under the level of consciousness, the contractedness. So there's a whole set of teachings that come from Shaivism, actually from Kashmir Shaivism, but it really doesn't matter where it comes from. But the teaching is around the grace of forgetting and the grace of remembering. And it's basically, it comes from the 5 acts of Shiva, if you want to look this up, the Pancha Krityas. But basically there's this, the teaching is that consciousness is doing this all the time. Like consciousness is remembering the wholeness and then forgetting the wholeness. Because consciousness is totally free to do whatever it wants to do. Like every option is available, every possibility is available, and we wouldn't have it any other way, honestly, even though most days we kind of like things to be easier, we want our lives to be easier. But in truth, like it's perfect that consciousness has every option. One of the options that consciousness has is to forget. So you, as a locus of consciousness, have the possibility of forgetting who you really are, forgetting, which means forgetting your light, forgetting your interdependence, forgetting that you're, you know, part of this web of sentience, forgetting how beautiful you are. You have the capacity to forget. So the problem is that usually if people haven't like engaged with these teachings very deeply, when they've forgotten, they've just forgotten, like they've completely forgotten. But once you start to engage with these teachings, then you're like aware, like, oh, I'm in the forgetting mode right now. And this is just one of the modes that consciousness is choosing to enact in me, through me. And it's a completely different experience of it. I hope that's not too esoteric.
I hope it's not too esoteric for you all either, because it's so important. And Kelly has lost me 10 times over in our friendship, where I really lose what she's saying. But if I stick with her and really do some of the studying that she is invited me to do, it has brought me, this type of teaching has brought me such a level of peace and sort of consciousness around what's going on. Why do I feel that I want my speaking engagement to get canceled when I was so excited about getting the speaking engagement in the first place? Why does it feel like I hope that the gallery that I'm going to pitch, that the door is locked? How come that doesn't feel disappointing, but it feels like relieving, you know? And some of the practices that Kelly has taught me around using those moments as an opportunity for yourself to investigate what the self is doing and thinking has been so transformative for me. And so what I would love for you to do, Kelly, is to give us all an assignment. I'll do the assignment live, okay, but I want you to do a little bit of a training with us where all of us that are on the call right now can get to experience the types of things that you do in your work. Because what Kelly does is she runs a community of people called Dharma Bridge, and they meet, you know, a couple times a month, and they're a sangha. They're a sangha that meets online. They're a group of spiritual seekers and people who practice spirituality and leadership and all of this. And they get together, and Kelly leads them through this educational process, both how to learn to make their own spiritual goals in meditation or study or whatever, but also how to hold each other accountable to the visions that they put forth, so that when the self-doubt comes and says like, nah, like, I hope no one signs up for my workshop, even though all you want is for people to sign up for your workshop, you're kind of like glad if you can maybe think about canceling it for a minute. Like, she helps you be a part of a community that holds you accountable to navigating that. and also working with it, like seeing it as an opportunity. And so that's what I want Kelly to do right now with all of us, and I'll be the guinea pig.
And one more thing, like before we go into any kind of a practice, there was another thing that you talked about earlier today that I think is really important, because some of you people out here might be like, I can't even imagine not wanting an opportunity. Like, I would never not take the opportunity. But there's other instances where, some people whose personalities are like real go-getters, which is actually how I usually see you, Heather. So it's kind of hard to imagine. but like you referenced earlier, that sometimes you'll have like a big success and then you won't even necessarily take it in.
Right.
Like you'll have something really amazing happen, but then you'll be like, meh. Or you'll like get really, because I've seen you in community, like being a really big leader, you'll get like so much energy around being this big leader. And then when people are like, wow, Heather's amazing, you're like, get those people away from me. Right?
I know. I know.
And that's not all that's not unusual, right? Like there's certain people on this call whom I know have had like these incredible successes in this life. And it's like the satisfaction lasts like a millisecond. Like the satisfaction doesn't even go in, really. It's like a blip on the screen. And then the feeling of like needing to drive toward another success is right there on the heels of the satisfaction that didn't even enter, right? So there's two things that I want you guys to work with, and one is called Tarpana, and one is called, for lack of a better term, taking in the good. So Tarpana, and I don't think we can actually do this live because it involves it's a little bit more lengthy.
Okay.
But I can explain it to you.
Yeah.
You can kind of put yourself there. I think it'll actually help just even visualize that it's happening. So Tarpana is really about addressing and healing intergenerational trauma. And trauma can mean actual trauma. You know, a lot of our ancestors like lived through genocide, or lived through like, you know, all the witches being burned, or, you know, like whatever, depending on your ancestry, or just like extreme friction in interpersonal relationships, abuse, what have you. And even if they did not, like, even if they didn't live through that kind of a trauma, they lived through the not knowing who they really are trauma, you know, which is also what we are living through when we're not like consciously addressing it. You know, it's painful to not be in a relationship with the light of your being. And even for people who have had some taste of the light of being, like the light can kind of get dim, and it's painful. So you can just think of that as a trauma that your ancestors might have gone through. And because of any one of those traumas, they could have been less than skillful human beings. So this will be an interesting exercise for you to do, because you may have a lot of unresolved feelings toward your parents and even your grandparents, right? So what I want you to do is actually, like, when you get home, or you can kind of do it in your mind's eye right now, like light a candle and put it on your altar, and put your ancestors on your altar. You can write their names, their full names, and put them on the altar. You can put, if you have pictures of them, you can put pictures of your ancestors on your altar. Even just your parents and grandparents is plenty. You don't even have to go back that far if you don't have names or photographs. But put them on your altar and basically just say to them, I get it. Like, it was imperfect, and I accept you completely. And I see you. I see the struggles that you've been through. And I love you. Basically just cut them loose. So try to see your ancestors in their struggle and see them with total love, and then see what happens. And I'm telling you, like, in my experience, doing this has given me this insight into the fact that there are ways in which I've been moving through the world unconsciously trying to resolve discord that happened way back. or unconsciously trying to impress or please or take care of my grandparents. And I think that, you know, my parents are probably in the same boat, you know, where there's some deep, low level desire to kind of be good, like be good and on this planet and like make a contribution and create a legacy in order to please the parent figure, when in truth the parent figure at that moment hadn't done their work at really like letting go of their past ties. So that's one thing that you can do that I would love for you guys to just give it a try and see what it unlocks for you. It's called Tarpana.
Tarpana. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think one of my intentions in having Kelly come in and present all of this is that a lot of times when we're on this pathway to making our vision a reality or becoming a leader or whatever, however we call it, we choose one thing and we're like, that's going to be the solution. Like, I'm going to get my financial model. I'm going to get an online course that's going to then engage thousands of people in this. And I'm going to build this community. And like, that's going to be the ticket to my freedom. Or I'm going to learn to tell my story and I'm going to get a TED Talk. And it's going to be so incredible. And I'm going to finally feel like the leader I was meant to be. And one of the things that I have the privilege of watching, both in my work running the Million Person Project and in my work as an entrepreneur in community with people, is I get to watch people just like knock their original vision out of the park. Just be like, TED main stage, done. Like $250,000 income for this year, done. Like, I get to watch people achieve the things that they thought were their ultimate goal. And because of that, I have come to, both in my personal life and encourage my community, I have come to embrace all kinds of different modalities and all kinds of different learnings, knowing that if I learn to tell my story and I become the best storyteller in the world, for example, as one of my clients might say, that something else is waiting there, you know, for them to navigate. And so that's why practices like what Kelly does and how Kelly builds long-term Sangha with the people who are on this journey. It's not, her work is not something you go through to achieve. You do achieve a lot by doing this stuff, but it's to develop the internal like resilience and curiosity and love for yourself to be able to navigate all of the things that you're doing in your life with more peace and more grace and more, you know, love. And so that's like, what is this practice you just taught us?
Tarpana.
Tarpana. How do you spell that?
Tarpana. I think I've actually only heard it spoken. I've never even seen it written.
Oh, so Tarpana, I'll type it out, and so you all can look it up. But that's why things like this, Tarpana, are not unrelated to the storytelling journey. If you choose to, if you choose to embrace Tarpana as part of your practice, great. You know, if it resonates with you, amazing. If it doesn't, there's so many different tools. And that's why engaging with Kelly for me has been so interesting, because it's like she's got this like tool sack full of like all kinds of like, oh, Gita this, Kali that, like, oh, psychotherapy this, all of these different tools from all of these different modalities that help, that not all of them help me. You know, all of them are interesting to me, but some of them like profoundly and deeply support me in my journey. And that's what I think that I get from engaging with you. And that's what I know that, the people that are in your community get from you, because I've talked to them. And so I want you to go to the second teaching. And I just want to read a couple of the comments that are here. So Letta says, I'm so glad I joined this call. This is so helpful. And the timing is perfect. I feel like you are speaking to me. Ha, you are, LOL. We are, Letta. And then Goldie says, I feel like you're talking exactly about my experience that I've been going through, as if I have been speaking to you. Your lecture makes me feel safe and supported.
Wow.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy for that. And I feel like there's so much more we could do in this direction, but I'd love for you to just give us one more practice.
Okay. Well, so the next practice that I was wanting to go into, it's actually kind of layered, but Rick Hansen refers to this as just taking in the good. He's a neuroscientist who wrote Buddha's Brain. But there's plenty of study right now about the fact that the brain actually does reform. It does rewire itself, like it does transform when we bring certain mindfulness practices in. So when you're in a moment where you actually feel good, slow down and take it in. Like practice taking it in. And practice taking it in with this attitude of like, this is actually who I am. Like this experience, even if it's something really simple, like say you go and you somebody like walks out in front of you on the street and then they happen to turn around and be like, oh, I'm sorry. And you meet eyes and you can see like that person actually cared about you and didn't mean to cut you off. And they were, there's a kindness underneath and you register like you received the kindness. Like slow down and take it in. And you might not get to it that moment, but really it's recommended 90 seconds of taking in the good. So that's one of the reasons that I practice metta meditation, which is loving kindness meditation. It's I've done a bunch of trainings on it. And if you want one, I'm happy. I could actually send them a training on a metta meditation. It's super simple, but it's basically just reminding yourself that you're not going to abandon yourself. Because conditioned mind, as I call it, is basically going to push you out into the world to try to get approval from other people, because that's the way conditioned mind operates. Because conditioned mind is like the process of conditioned mind is really convinced that you are this separate self that's not fully worthy of in your own right. So it's kind of like, it gets a little messy with vision and storytelling and anything that engages the ego, because we can get a lot of fire underneath us trying to pull this project off, right? And then we can realize, oh my God, like all that fire came from wanting something outside of myself, and that doesn't even feel good anyway. Like what I really want is this deep sense of who I really am and this worthiness. Like that's what I really, really want. And when you start to practice metta, loving kindness, you're reminding yourself over and over again, I'm here. Like I'm here for you. I love you. I'm not going to abandon you. Like you can go out and have a shitty day and get shut down right, left, and center. People can reject you. They can hiss at you. You can feel like life is a firing squad. And yet at the end of the day, you're going to come back and figure out how to get resourced again just by breathing. And I mean, metta is super simple, because basically what you do with metta meditation is you just say, may I be safe? May I be happy? May I be free from suffering. May I be filled with loving kindness. And you kind of pour love in until you feel like you've filled up your cup and reminded yourself of who you really are. And then you start to extend metta out. And then you send metta out to the people that you love. And then you send metta out to the next layer, the next kind of circle of people that you have neutral relationships with. And ultimately you send metta out to the people that you even have aversions to. Like certain political figures or what have you. Like you include everyone in your practice. And it's so it starts, some people when they first hear about metta, they're like, oh, it's so like Pollyanna-ish and it's so like woo woo and sweet. But the reality is, like, if you're really practicing metta, you're extending metta out to everyone. And that is an incredible discipline, because the mind wants to, like, not pure mind, but conditioned mind wants to chop everything up and categorize and guys or whatever, like create hierarchies and decide who's good and who's bad and who's safe and who's not safe and what's wrong and what's right. But there's not this sense of like, this all just is as it is. And metta is the willingness to send metta to everyone is also the willingness to see, yes, to the, there is evil in the world, or there does appear to be. People's actions certainly don't tend always toward the most enlightened and salubrious, but to the extent that there is evil in the world, there's pain underneath that. There's this same kind of discord that I feel inside of myself happening in that person, and they probably inherited it from their ancestors, and they didn't have tools to deal with it. They didn't have any tools to get resourced, and like, at least I do, and at least I can. Like, can I find that willingness within myself? So metta becomes a pretty fierce discipline, actually. So metta and taking in the good, it's kind of like two sides. Taking in the good, it's like you can do it on the spot just as you move through the world. Metta is more of a formal practice typically, but those are two things that you could work with.
Okay, and how do you take in the good for 90 seconds? Like, what do you keep saying to yourself over and over? Or what do you...
I mean, well, so I'm kind of, those two things, I'm kind of like blurring the two, honestly. But when you're practicing metta and you're saying, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering, may I be filled with loving kindness, I'm really trying to concentrate the mind on that prayer, essentially, which is not necessarily a petitionary prayer like you're asking for those things from outside of yourself, but really like, may I have the presence of mind to connect to my safety that's present in this moment right now. Like, that's what you would then breathe in and take in. And then I would say, like, you could do that practice on the spot just by really noticing, like, when you're out in the world and you feel that there's ease, you feel that there's harmony, taking it in. You might not be able to practice it for 90 seconds at that moment, but just taking it in and recognizing that that's actually who you are. Because conditioned mind is going to go on telling you there's something wrong with you. Like, because that's what conditioned mind does. They call it the vikalpas in Sanskrit. Like, the vikalpas are essentially designed, I mean, not designed, but the function of the vikalpas is to create difference. And so the mind is like karmically dictated. It's almost like encoded by difference. And so when you start to create this practice where you're just like, oh, I'm actually just being with things, being with the goodness that is, and just being aware of the goodness that is, then you're like, oh, and I'm also aware of conditioned mind persisting in telling me a story about what's wrong or what's not, or what's wrong with someone else, or what I should do about it, or whatever. But you start to just kind of take a step back so that you see that conditioned mind is doing what it's doing, but you stop taking it personally, because it's not even my conditioned mind or your conditioned mind. Like, when you're in your suffering, you're not just in your suffering, you're in suffering. And it's not that different from other human beings suffering. Like, it might be ever so slightly different, but it's not radically different. So what is, I think Gabrielle just got home. So we might have a visitation from Gabrielle and some children. We'll see. Anyway, I think I got to the end of that, essentially. It's just opening up kind of more bird's eye view awareness of how conditioned mind continues to operate is really actually freeing, because then you're not going to get panicked every time you see it emerge again. I think that's really important. Like, I mean, especially for people that are out there, like, trying to tell their story, trying to do something big. They felt really great yesterday when they were putting the story together, and they feel like crap today. And the voices are like just railing on them, you're not good enough, you're not beautiful enough, your story's not interesting enough, nothing ever really happened to you, you didn't invent anything, you're not a designer, like whatever, like I'm not the person that the TED stage is looking for, then those voices can be really debilitating. But when you start seeing, oh, there it is again, like, that's just conditioned mind doing what conditioned mind has always done to people over the eons. And that's the world that we've got. Like, we've got this kind of a world because of those energies. So the only thing I can do, I can't analyze it away. The only thing I can do is try to access the willingness to make a shift right now.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about both of these practices is that they're both things that you can do once and feel how it feels. and they're also things that you could do daily, or, you know, as much as you want. Like, and that's what I think is so important about your teachings and the way that you share your work in the world, is that you have enough of an understanding of all of these different practices and schools of thought that you bring so much to the table for us to try on as seekers, you know?
Yeah. And I would just say, just in response to like, you can do it once or you can do it daily. There are some people who, if they don't do it daily, they will get to a point where they can't even do it once.
What do you mean?
Like if they don't actually create a practice of this, the mind will get so kind of calcified in different energies that they will have a very hard time doing it even once.
So you're saying like,
I'm basically saying that like our sanity is tenuous. Like our wellness is like, it hangs by a thread. So, and I'm sure that there's somebody on this call who's had that experience, you know, like you've gone into a really deep depression, or you've gone down a really shadowy path, you know? And so I just think that like, if you are in a moment in your life where you can conceive of creating a practice that will support you, just fucking do it, because the truth is like, you can't take it for granted. You can get disconnected from these like positive inclinations, and then what's truly happening at the level of your mind, like your neurology, is that the integrating fibers are not as healthy. Like your brain is affected by your mind, by how you choose to use your mind. And so if you don't choose to use your mind as well as you can when you have the freedom to make that choice, then your brain is going to be less capable of making the right choice in the future.
Wow. So I think that's a perfect segue into what I want you all to know, is that Kelly is out there as a teacher, and that her community and her teachings are a real resource that we all have access to in this world. And that's why I'm having her here to tell you all about it. And so what she does is she runs something called Dharma Bridge, which is it's like a year long, but people sign up year after year. And basically a couple times a month, they're coming together in community, in Sangha, to practice these types of practices. And to mostly, for me, the way I see it, it's like commit to that vision for yourself, and to commit to, like she's saying, if you can conceive that you could do this daily right now, like if it feels generative, like do it now, so that you can be supported when things are not falling into place for you. And so that's what I see as Kelly's, the role of Kelly's community, is to create Sangha and to provide tools with leaders and change makers like yourself to get to the next level in their spiritual practice. And so Kelly has offered to get on the call with 10 people in my community. And this is something that we do as entrepreneurs. We do this with each other's communities to say, like, I love you and I benefit so much from your work, so I want to share you with my community, and vice versa. And so why don't you tell them how they can learn more about your work or get involved in what you're offering to them?
Yeah, well, I first just want to say, like, this is, any friend of Heather's is a friend of mine. So like, people that are doing this kind of work in the world, I think are perfect for Dharma Bridge, the program that I'm doing, because it really, like, it facilitates you moving into the world in a deeper, more wholesome way, essentially, like, and taking on bigger projects. And so it's very satisfying for me to work with people who want to do spiritual practice, but who also really want to apply it to a bigger vision of their lives, and have a bigger impact if that's what they're meant to have. So anybody that's in that camp, or anybody who's like listening to this and they're like, yeah, I used to be connected to myself spiritually, and I used to have a big vision for my life, but I've really gotten disconnected, like that, you are also my dream. Because truly, like, as I said earlier, like there are moments where we kind of hit these incredible stumbling blocks, and it feels like we're not able to go forward. And those actually end up being the richest moments. Like if you're in the dark, you actually have the possibility of lighting up a place that you don't ordinarily see. And so, you know, don't lose that opportunity. So anybody who's interested, I have 10 spots available on my calendar, and we can get on a 30-minute call and talk about what your vision is. If you're working with this, if you're working with your story, if you're doing this work with Heather, I'd love to listen to what's going on with you developing your story, and do anything that I can do to support you kind of seeing the path through to how to bring that story to the world, how to bring your projects to fruition. So yeah, please sign up. And I will also, for you guys, send you, if you sign up with me, I will also get you access to a metta meditation. I would love to do that for anyone, really, whether you sign up for a call or not. You can also, if you can.
Yeah. And so, I'll share with you all Kelly's link and so you can schedule a call with her, or I'll also send an email after this where I send you her email. So if you want that meditation, you can email her. But I really encourage you to take the opportunity to get on the call with her and just be really honest. Like if you get on that call and you're like, I'm going to break through on this specific thing right now. Like if being on this call right now, you thought like, yeah, I am getting in my own way in this way. Like just get on the call and say that, even if it feels a little weird, or, you know, just even like she mentioned that I fell this weekend. I was camping and I went for a jog and I was feeling all healthy. It was like one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been, which is up in Away Park up in Petrolia and Humboldt. It's one of my favorite places on earth. And I was actually thinking of you, Curtis, because I was like, this place is as beautiful as the places that Curtis hangs out. Like, it's like, I'm always jealous of your big lake posts, but there's a river running through and there's wild horses. And I was just like on a run. I was coming right to the end of my run and I turned back into the campground and literally fell flat on my face, like stumbled once, but you know, like that even gave the fall more power. I just like launched onto the ground. And it was so interesting because then I came to Kelly's house today and I was like, ow, look at my hands. And even just in like 5-minute conversation about my fall, she helped me to reflect on what an opportunity it was to fall. And like, what were the things that I noticed about myself and my pattern, and what came up immediately for me upon falling, and how does that reflect in other parts of my life, and what choice did I make in that moment? So, and I have so much more to think about now because of that, little mini session right there, just, in casual conversation. And so I encourage you all to bring whatever you have to the call with Kelly and to really open up your vulnerability and see if this woman can support you in that 30 minutes. And I also, please let me know if you are considering joining her Dharma Bridge program, or you want any support from me. I brought her to you so I can also support you in whatever you need to make that decision, and to whatever's coming up for you around that. And this is what we're trying to do. Like, as entrepreneurs, we know we're looking for our people. We're all looking for our people to build our programs, to build our business, to build our impact. And one of the things that we love about being in community with each other and with all the other entrepreneurs that we partner with is that when you feel that deep resonance with someone, that's when you share. That's when you share that person. That's when you share that idea. And there can be so much hesitation when we're like building our thing to like, well, what if they think it's weird that I'm bringing spiritual practices into storytelling? I'm so like I'm so over that line of thinking. It's like, what if I get to be all of who I am, and I get to share the things I love, and I get to share the gifts that I have, and I get to share the vulnerabilities and anxieties that I have with the people who are here. And everybody's free to be here or not. And so that's the way that we're doing entrepreneurship. That's the way that we're building our businesses, that we're building our communities. And I really, really am so thankful to all of you for taking the time, staying here till the end of this. And I hope that it was really useful to hear this. And I just want to read a couple of the comments. Curtis said, awesome, just the kind of guidance I'm needing. Can't wait to chat, Kelly. I'm interested in Dharma Bridge as well. Awesome,
Yay.
Curtis. I think that would be so great.
Yeah, just get on my schedule. So if you go to kellyblaser.com/schedule, Curtis, that's where the link is, or for any of you, kellyblaser.com/schedule.
And then there's Letta helping out Debbie with the rest of the metta meditation.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was very useful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Letta, for being here. I wish you were here too. And so I will send out the replay. I will also send out the links, and have an amazing Monday, and sending you all lots of love. And thank you, Kelly, so much for spending this hour with us. Okay, love you too. Bye.
Thanks.